if you don't have your child, there's just nothing left. These people are the strongest people I've ever met in my life. They are amazing people. They are amazing people, and all they want is common sense laws so that this doesn't happen to another parent in Texas again. Imagine that. Imagine that.
Would you be sitting here announcing that you're running against Ted Cruz if it wasn't for how you were affected by what happened in Uvalde?
His roots are SA, but he has his sights set on DC. Roland Gutierrez went to high school right behind me at Central Catholic. He went to college at St. Mary's, was a member of the San Antonio City Council before running and winning in the Texas House and the Texas Senate. Now he wants to be U.S. Senator. In this edition of Spriester Session, one-on-one with Roland Gutierrez. We're joined by State Senator Roland Gutierrez on this edition of Spriester Sessions. State Senator, welcome. This morning, made a big announcement. You were going to run for United States Senate against Ted Cruz. Why?
Well, thank you, Steve, for having me. I'll tell you, it has not been a tremendously easy decision. It's based out of frustration. I've been frustrated with the direction of this country. It was a hard decision for my wife and I. But at the end of the day, you know, we're willing to sacrifice the commitment that it's going to take to be able to run and win. And I believe that we can. A lot of people have suggested that this is some response to Uvalde, and some part it is. We saw all of the failures from law enforcement, emergency services, the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and how we handled that matter and compensation victims funds. We've got so much work to do in all of those things that happened, but it's beyond that. We are at a time right now in our state where we're truly broken. We're broken in the areas of medicine and how we dole out medical costs and health care to people. We're broken on our infrastructure grid. Imagine that. We had 2 years ago, we had 800 people die and Ted Cruz ran off to Cancun. Look, no one expected him to go up on an electrical line and go fix something. They just expected him to be here, to understand what we all went through. That very day, I went out to Divine to give nursing homes that had run out of water, bottled water that a Walmart had given us. I am frustrated with where we are in this country, where we are with public servants that want to divide us rather than bring us together and solve problems. And Ted Cruz is right at the center of all that.
Was this an aspiration for you? I mean, we're sitting here just steps away from where you went to high school, Central Catholic, just right across the street from KSAT. Was this something you always envisioned doing?
Well, I think, you know, my whole life, Steve, has been about hard work. My parents were immigrants to this country. They sacrificed tremendously to send us to school down the road. That school and the upbringing that my parents gave me was about service and serving your country, serving your community, helping people. I've done that as a lawyer, as an entrepreneur. I've created jobs. And I think that, you know, where we're going forward, this is certainly not a run for ambition. Uvalde certainly did change me, but we are truly broken. And we have to come back to what public service is supposed to be. As I mentioned earlier, when you and I were young men, the congressman or the senator would come down and said, look, I brought this money for these roads or these hospitals. I brought you the benefits of government. Ted Cruz hasn't done that, and a lot of people in office don't do that anymore. That's jobs and opportunity and well-being for Americans and Texans. We need to get back to that.
Do you think you're fighting an uphill battle against an incumbent like Ted Cruz and in the Democratic primary against somebody like Representative Allred?
Well, listen, you know, Allred's certainly a nice person. I imagine I've spoken to him on one occasion. Quite honestly, I have a proven track record of getting big things done, not just on San Antonio City Council, building a library on the south side, streets, curbs, sidewalks, all those things. Went to the State House, created the National Center for Warrior Resiliency, the Farmer Suicide Prevention Act. Sid Miller said I saved 60 lives last year. That's amazing. We just had an amendment for teachers that was important. Unfortunately, the House stripped that amendment. And so we're going to continue to do big things for folks back home. In the state Senate for sure, and as we move on to the United States Senate. I'm no stranger to hard work, and I don't get scared away from a fight, whether it's Allred or Cruz. I'm going to work harder than all of them because that's the way I was raised.
How do you unlock something in the Texas voter that nobody has been able to do? Beto O'Rourke, perhaps as close as anybody, within a couple percentage points of Cruz. What is your strategy to make that happen in Texas?
Well, we're going to go out and talk to people throughout this state, much like Beto did. But we're going to have a conversation about what's truly ailing us at home. Let's be really clear. Ted Cruz and others like him like to talk about this invading horde of immigrants and that they're responsible for everything bad that happens to us. But some immigrant looking for an American dream isn't responsible for poor education outcomes like we have in Texas. 45th in the nation on spending and 45th in performance. Poor health care outcomes where working class families have to dig into their pocket every year, $6,000 to $10,000. That's not right. We should have Medicaid expansion, and Ted Cruz can have legislation to keep governors like Greg Abbott from keeping that from us. We should have a senator that is looking to fix our electricity grid by tying on to the eastern and western grids. We have to be able to have the things that are truly affecting us be what we talk about as public servants. The boogeyman, the things that Ted Cruz wants to talk about, I'm not interested in any of that. I want to talk to Republicans and Democrats about what's affecting their pocketbooks at home. That's the conversation that we're going to have.
I want to read the reaction that Senator Cruz had to your announcement this morning. Quote, "We welcome Senator Gutierrez to the race. Texans will now get to watch Colin Allred and Roland Gutierrez slug it out for who can be the most radical leftist in the state." End quote. That's from one of Ted Cruz's spokespeople. Your reaction to that?
I get that Ted thinks that that's what, motivates his base, that kind of divisive politics motivates people. But the only thing I'd tell Ted Cruz is to go out and get to work. He spent the entire weekend talking about a Disney movie, a Barbie movie, and a map of China in that movie, and talking about how the Hollywood influencers were doing a number on all of us. And yet working class Texans are suffering. They don't have the money that they need to cover their medical expenses. Teachers are suffering in Texas. Folks are suffering in this tremendous heat right now. They can't even afford to turn the air conditioning on because it's so darn hot. And so we've got tremendous problems that are facing everyday Texans. That's where I'm going to be, in that space where we work to solve problems, not in crazy land. And so the only thing I'd tell Ted Cruz is that we can talk about these things as we get onto the general election. We can talk about what's important to Texas. My suggestion is that he start getting to work for all of us now.
Do you think you're a leftist radical?
I think I have a proven track record of getting big things done in this state, like making sure that developers didn't encroach on our military bases. I remember going into the Dallas community and sitting down with Mayor Betsy Price in Fort Worth and talking about how we needed to protect our military bases. And we did that. I remember when we passed the Center for Warrior Resiliency and the other accomplishments that we've had along the way. We are about providing opportunity for all Texans, not just rich and wealthy people, for all Texans. And that's the way we need to be. We need a Texas that's going to lift all, a tide that's going to lift us all up, not just the few. We need to have discussions that are going to help each and every one of us. And we can do that. The resources are right there in front of us. You just have to be wanting to really get down to work. And I don't think Ted Cruz wants that.
I want to talk about Uvalde now and what happened that May Day at Robb Elementary. Did it change you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every time I talk about Uvalde, it affects me. Those families have become more than friends, more than constituents for sure. They become my family. And I go out with them, I invite them out, I invite them on trips. I told them that I'm going to talk about their children for the rest of my life. Imagine this, I had to sue the government to get information, lost the lawsuit in court, and then I succumbed and signed a non-disclosure agreement. I saw things images that I can't get out of my head to this day. And I'm going to be talking about them for the rest of my life because how is it that we can't have legislation that protects kids in such a way where we don't have 18-year-olds buying guns like this, where we have people we allow them to buy guns like this at a gun show without even so much as showing an ID, or be able to, as Florida has done, create extreme risk protective orders. When a mentally ill person makes a threat, we can take those guns away. We can't do that in Texas. And yet Republicans are in favor of this, and their Republican politicians will not do it. So Uvalde's definitely a part of this conversation, kind of the beginning and the end, but we're going to keep talking about it forever.
How did it change you?
There's not one political issue out there, not inflation, not the cost of gas, not anything that's as important as this. Because if you don't have your child, there's just nothing left. These people are the strongest people I've ever met in my life. They are amazing people. They are amazing people. And all they want is common sense laws so that this doesn't happen to another parent in Texas again. Imagine that. Imagine that.
Would you be sitting here announcing that you're running against Ted Cruz if it wasn't for how you were affected by what happened in Uvalde?
Yeah, a lot of people have said that this is some kind of ambitious move on my part in utilizing that issue. No, I don't think I would have. I think that moment in time and the months that happened after certainly changed me in such a way that I felt that I needed to continue on in public office to try to change the conversation about what's happening. We can't have public servants that are dividing us and just choose to, scapegoat people and pick on marginalized folks and tell us that that's policy making. That's not right. You need to help us build infrastructure and build schools and hospitals and the things that we're supposed to get. There's a bargain when you become a taxpayer, you pay your taxes, and the idea is that those taxes are supposed to bring something back to you, the goods and services of government. All that's lost on a guy like this. He wants to stay in there for his own ambition and to maintain power. And I think I've had enough of politicians like that.
Do you think your message resonates with Republicans and independents?
I think that there's a lot of people that are tired and would want to get back to a Texas, a United States of America, where Republicans and Democrats can get together and talk about bringing resolutions and bringing laws that are going to affect people positively, how we're going to build things, how we're going to grow our economy. Because when you grow an economy, you provide jobs, you have disposable income, you can educate your kids, and you can give them the opportunity to maybe even go to Central Catholic if you wanted to. But none of that happens if we're stuck in this politics of division. It is the one thing I think that has to stop now, because we have to tell politicians like this that that's not America, that's not who we are, and those aren't our values. It's not the way any one of us were raised, not a Democrat or a Republican. We were raised on Christian values that said help your neighbor. It didn't say help your neighbor if he was a certain color. It just said help your neighbor. That's the idea here.
The last time Ted Cruz ran, he ran against Beto O'Rourke. Beto, very proud of the fact he went to every county in the state. He was all over. Do you learn anything from that campaign, or is your strategy different than that?
Beto ignited Texas, and he ignited this idea that people began to question why. I hope we can continue that, and I hope that we have just as much excitement behind our campaign. I am going to do a few things differently. We're going to spend some time in different parts of the state trying to generate interest in what we're talking about. We'll certainly, go from the Panhandle to Brownsville and El Paso and East Texas as well, and everywhere in between. But my whole life has been based on work, and so I'm not afraid of it. We're going to do it. We're going to do whatever we need to do to have a discussion that's intrinsically based on what we all deserve as Texans.
Does the border play a big role in your campaign?
Yeah, I think that there is, for a couple of reasons. I think that there is also this, Democrats are scared to talk about immigration, and we need to have that discussion for two reasons. Number one, those immigrants aren't responsible for all those outcomes I suggested earlier. They're just not. They're not responsible for the failures of government. But we also have to fix our immigration policy. We do need to secure our border to a better degree. We need to stop the stunts that Abbott is doing, which is a waste of tax dollars. He's not telling you that we deport thousands of people every day. The federal government does. And his stunts actually keep them housed on our dime in trumped up facilities that he's created. The fact is that there's just not enough money there to solve this issue on the state side. We need to reinvent our immigration policy so our ranchers and farmers that want these workers can get them without struggling through the visa program, our construction companies, our restaurant and hospitality industries. We can do all of this. We just have to have the political will to meet on both sides, because business wants it, and say we're going to let in a certain amount of people in these types of categories. And by the way, if you cross the border, you're ineligible. You're going to have to go to a consulate in whatever country you live in and get in line, and we're going to have 10,000 jobs for cooks or whatever that might be. But we have to have a process that makes sense, right? We can't just kick this football back and forth to each other. And so for people on the border, yes, we're going to talk to them, but we're also not going to scare them. We're going to explain to them that's not the reason that you're not making ends meet.
You and I know each other personally. We go back, when you were with on the city council. I know you're a girl dad, like I am. How is your family about this whole decision? How was that discussion, and where are they today?
My wife and I have been doing this for a long time, and it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing on a family. There's a lot of travel, a lot of nastiness that goes on and when you're running for these types of races. And listen, we're going to get through it like we always have, and we just push hard and move forward, telling the truth to people. My wife met with some folks from Uvalde here very recently. Took her to dinner with some moms, and she said, "Now I know." She got it.
Was there a time where you were thinking about walking away from public service?
Yeah, probably at the beginning of this session, I thought that I'd had enough, even though Uvalde had certainly fundamentally changed me. It's just so one-sided these days. And I don't mean that the Republicans are winning. I don't mean that. It's just gotten to this place that has become this punching ground of insults rather than this place where we're going to share our good ideas on how we're going to help all Texans. We've got to get back to some sense of civility and civics. People need to vote. Absolutely. I know we say that all the time. But things that happen in Austin affect you. Things that happen in Washington affect your pocketbook. You have to engage. Otherwise, people are going to affect you in ways that you can't imagine, just like what we've seen in Austin. Going after women's rights, going after LGBTQ persons, going after transgender kids, going after drag queens, just nonsense. Picking on marginalized people rather than to focus on the real problems that are facing us all today.
That's all the questions I have. I mean, do you want to, let's say you meet somebody who's not familiar with Roland Gutierrez, maybe has heard about you through what happened with Uvalde. What's your message going to be to them to support your campaign?
My message is going to be, Steve, that we are broken, and you just need to look and turn on the nightly news and see what's going on in America to recognize that. My message is that we can fix all of this together. It's going to take hard work on all our parts. It really is what you can do for your country, like John Kennedy said. It really is that. We all have to do our part. But we have to understand that this very notion of picking on each other and blasting immigrants and blasting this other group, that is not how we fix the real problems that are staring us square in the face. I'm going to work hard to communicate those issues. I'm going to work hard to tell people that we need to get back to this civility. I look forward to having this discussion over the next several months. God willing, things go well, we'll be the candidate into November of next year.
Roland Gutierrez, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Steve.